My name is Sylvie Carlos, and I am sitting down with Radio Academy's new MD, Aradhna Tayal Leach, and we're just going to have a light-hearted conversation. So thank you all for joining us. I think it's right that I'm just going to start with who I am, because you're like, who are you? So my name is Sylvie Carlos. I am one of the 30 under 30s for the class of 2022. I'm an audio producer. I'm a host, a consultant, a disruptor, and I'm a PhD candidate, effectively exploring how the audio industry engages with certain audiences. So very happy to be here. And I want to share the spotlight with you, of course.
Thanks, Sylvie. Thanks for being here. Hello, I'm Aradhna, and I'm the Managing Director of the Radio Academy. I'm still getting used to saying that, so bear with me.
So you've told us what your new role is, but who is Aradhna? Who are you?
Well, I'll just tell you a bit about myself. So I live in London. I live in North London, but I'm from Manchester, where I grew up. And I was going to say this is a secret, but I'm about to tell you, and this is also being filmed and then going on the internet, so it's not going to be secret for much longer. I was born in Birmingham, where we have an event on tonight. So for anyone who is at Birmingham and watching this later, hello, Birmingham. So I grew up in Manchester, and then I moved to London when I joined the BBC as a broadcast engineer. So that was my first job in radio. So fixing radio studios, microphones, national BBC networks in London. And then I was at the BBC for about 12 years, so nearly a lifer, but not quite. Moved around a lot. It was really mixed and often great experience, because I got to then work in the BBC Academy, so sort of following a passion for training and development. And then actually that's probably where I developed this concept of what training and development really means when you step outside of the classroom, which is where I was doing audio technology training. So outside of the classroom, ran initiatives like BBC Women in Engineering, Fast Train, which was all about opening access to training, actual classroom training and development opportunities, CPD for freelancers. What else? Moved on to television distribution, the dark side, and worked with BBC Sports and partners such as Sky and Virgin Media, so a bit of a foray outside of the BBC, which when you join straight out of school or university, that was quite a big deal at the time, especially the first time I went into Sky as a BBC person. And I have to say, slight diversion, but it was the week that W1A just aired. But I have to say, it was quite good. It broke the ice, walked in. Everyone immediately started asking about it. I was like, yes, it is a documentary. It's cool. So that was working with partners to be able to broadcast all of the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow. That was 2014. And then worked in BBC Archives for a bit, where I looked after the technology strategy. So that was really interesting, because my whole background had been in technology, production, how we get our content out to audiences. So suddenly seeing this whole other huge, really important side of the industry was a bit of an eye-opener. And that's where I kind of got more involved in kind of strategic work and sort of looking at the bigger picture and piecing things together to what is the end goal, I suppose, and how does it serve broadcasting. So how does it serve what the content is that we're putting out to audiences, and how we're relating to audiences? What does archives mean to that? And it's really important, but you wouldn't necessarily think of it. So it was really useful for me to sort of start getting, there's a bit of a journey there where I started getting more and more of the bigger picture of what this industry is that I'm part of.
I do just want to say, I think archivists at times go completely unnoticed, and they do a lot of stuff, like a lot of the features and things that you see, like they put it together. They literally dig deep. So big up the archivists.
Yeah, and also really, really important, because one of my projects was in the BBC's Written Archive Centre, which is a physical centre out near Reading. And if it weren't for places like that and the archivists who work there, we wouldn't know. You know, when you roll out old episodes of Doctor Who or whatever other archive material, who do you have to pay for the rights for that? Who was the actor? What was the contract with them? Who, you know, how does that all work? So in terms of learning about the business of broadcasting and media, it's absolutely essential. You know, without the Written Archive Centre, you wouldn't be allowed, or you wouldn't know if you're allowed to show any of the archive material. And then every time a big event happens, in the news, for example, you'd just be sat here now talking about it, and there's no context because you're not allowed to use any of that old material. And suddenly you just think, oh yeah, never thought about that. Or
you don't even know how to find it. Like simple things like that.
Yeah. And then I left the BBC about 7 years ago. And I've been freelance ever since. So I set up my business, Clockhouse Media, which is a consultancy sort of dedicated to industry development. So what that means is looking at strategically or on a delivery level, so project management, what is it that we need to do, must do, to make our industry stronger, more resilient, more effective, have a bigger revenue, all related to how well and how much and how widely we're engaging with audiences and each other. So that's broadly what I do. It might be with an individual organisation. So, for example, diversity and inclusion initiatives, or I hate diversity and inclusion initiatives, looking at how we approach the lack of diversity, the lack of inclusion and the lack of accessibility in many areas through a strategic approach and you know, a lot of internal negotiation and engagement and education. So that's something I did at the National Theatre in Sadler's Wells, for example, and then other things that are more broad. So Creative Cities Convention, I was the exec producer there, that looks at promoting production and commissioning outside of London. So that was an event that moves all around the country. And I actually worked here at the Film and TV charity, where we were looking at how to have better mental health and wellbeing for everyone working behind the scenes in film and TV. It's very broad.
You've had an array of roles that we've pinpointed all around, but I think at the heart of it, what I am getting from it is you've done a lot of creative-based things, be it tech or coming and going. So what I want to ask you is, what drives you creatively?
I think the thing that I was really excited about when I first heard about this job called engineer at the BBC, which I only found out about when I was 18, and I know a lot of people who are engineers at the BBC. They've wanted to do that since they were 5 years old. You know, I didn't know it was a job. It didn't even occur to me that could be a thing, even though I went, you know, whatever, age 10 or something, I got to go to the BBC on Oxford Road in Manchester. Oh, wow. And it was the 8 to 11 from Manchester. It was like the Saturday morning show. It was so cool. And obviously you're seeing the cameras and everything, but it still didn't occur to me that engineer might be a job at the BBC. And I was studying engineering, but I was basically spending all my time dancing or, you know, looking at theatre shows, stage managing, sort of. And so the thing that really excited me and still excites me is stories and storytelling and the impact that stories have on us as humans and our relationships and in society. And that's what excited me. And the thing was that I could do that as an engineer. You know, I was directly affecting getting stories out into the world. And, you know, my contribution was through the technology. Other people's is through finding the stories or producing the stories or the distribution side or whatever it is. So I think that still drives me in the industry. I think it's so not just lovely, but really, really important in terms of what our industry does in society. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing that drove me to industry development is, well, are we doing it, and how are we doing it? So the stories have impact if you are reaching people, if you're representing people, if you're reflecting their lived experience, if you're challenging them, if you're entertaining them, if you're driving emotion, and if they keep coming back and keep exploring more and more and more in different things. So you can only do that if you've got a diverse range of voices and perspectives and approaches in the industry, as much as you are trying to impact people, in the world. So I think that's where I went from engineering, something I didn't mention, I also produced independent films as a sort of a passion project, and I really loved it. The thing is, I personally could spend all my energy on making one film in a way that I felt was the right way to do it, in a way that everyone's being paid properly, in a way that it's not just the same people always getting those jobs, potentially because they could afford to not be paid, because independent short films, not a huge amount of money, in a way that everybody on set is safe and looked after, and in a way that the story that we're telling has resonance and impact. I could do that on one film, but what about all the others? Maybe 3 people might see my short film in a festival somewhere. So that's the other thing that drove me to industry development, is actually where my skill is, and something that I really enjoy is looking at that bigger picture, that strategy.
Being able to make a bigger impact.
Yeah, and seeing where all the pieces and all the different people have a part to play, and thinking, well, actually, if we could work with the whole industry and get everybody to look at, making sure everyone gets paid properly and making sure everyone gets an equal opportunity to get to work on that film, or to amplify their voice rather than telling them what their voice should be. And if everyone was safe and felt looked after, then all of the films would be doing that, and then we would have such a wider impact. So rather than me trying to do that on my one film, for me, I see that I can have an impact in this role in industry development with sort of joining up partnerships across the industry and having these discussions to move the whole industry and every organisation towards that point as well.
Towards the point of equity is the ideal, what we're looking for.
Yes, essentially, because I think, what I was saying, it all comes down to equity, is how we make a stronger, more resilient, richer industry. I mean, it directly links to making more money. We're in a commercial industry. It directly brings in more audiences, more audience engagement, and therefore lifts our whole industry so that we can do more of it. And that's the path that I see. If we're not reflecting or representing audiences, then that's because of a lack of equity.
Agreed. I definitely think so. I want to bring it back to the Radio Academy. So for some people, Aradhna she might be a brand new face, right? She's now the MD, but you're not actually new to the Radio Academy, are you?
No, we've been friends for a long time. So
tell us about your history.
So most recently, I was a trustee. I stepped down from the trustee board in 2020. At which point I was also awarded a fellowship, which was really amazing. It's for services to the audio industry and to the Radio Academy. So since then, as much as I've stepped away from the board, I've sort of been involved in coming along to events like these. And as anyone here on the board or has worked with me, I'm not one to shy away from telling you what I think. So there's been that relationship. But actually before that, it goes back to my BBC days when I joined the TechCon committee. So at the time, TechCon was a half-day set of lectures, I would call them, that was just before the radio festival. And I joined that, and we set up the first a technology masterclass for the Radio Academy because it was all very production focused. So that's going way back. And then something else that I didn't mention, which is really important part of me and what I do, is I'm also director of Radio TechCon. That's my co-director, Anne Charles, over there. And would you believe it, Anne, it's since 2016, that's 7 years. So Radio TechCon is an annual conference for the technology and engineering community in radio and audio broadcasting. So Radio TechCon was set up in 2016, and kind of in our capacity as directors of Radio TechCon, we've also had a relationship with the Radio Academy, which supports us and, you know, providing bursaries for people who might not be able to come, and we in turn have been able to come and work with the Radio Academy and kind of bring our engineering community and make sure that, you know, the engineering and technical community is seen as an important, vital part of radio and audio.
Well, that slides in very nicely with my next question. So typically when we talk about radio and audio, we naturally think about our favourite presenters, right? Ideally music presenters a lot of the time, and then producers as secondary. But we're missing a lot of others, which is how I think things like TechCon come in. And who else are we missing? Who else needs to be brought to the table more often?
It's something that I feel really strongly about, and something that I have seen evolving really rapidly in our industry, but often less rapidly within organisations like the Radio Academy, to be completely honest. And I think at the same time that is changing. And for example, first engineer at the helm of the Radio Academy, like feeling proud. It's not that engineering is new. I mean, you know, what was it? Helen, the second employee of the BBC, was it? But, you know, just kind of recognising everybody that is in our industry. And, you know, that doesn't mean that I think the Radio Academy, for example, is doing that representation of every single area. What the Radio Academy, I believe, is here for is to support everybody who works in radio or audio. And then organisations like Radio TechCon are there as kind of the more sort of important places in terms of that really in-depth community engagement with those areas. So obviously engineering and the technical side is one of them. There's also, I think, you know, when we talk about working in audio and you talk about presenters or producers, well, actually more and more in radio, but especially in podcasting and other forms of audio, including streaming services, so many of those roles are all merging. You know, obviously you've got your presenters who are also producing their own shows, and you've got, you know, the engineers who are also presenters, and you've got journalists who maybe don't consider themselves an audio producer, but it's what they're doing. They're journalists, they're dedicated to news, and their medium is putting it out through a podcast or on the news, on a news show, on a radio programme. I think it's really important to also support, as an industry, all of the grassroots organisations, by which I mean community stations and, you know, community-led internet radio stations. A lot of podcasts are grassroots to the level of it's a person who has a passion for an area, and they don't see that represented anywhere else. And I think, you know, a lot of the people working in those areas are really important in terms of engaging with people and, you know, being a friend and a support to a listener, but they don't necessarily get paid for it. And often that's by choice when you volunteer for a community station. Unfortunately, it's often not by choice when somebody's setting up their own independent podcast and they're sort of left to do it by themselves until they get loads and loads of followers, and then suddenly they get paid for it then. But I think that, you know, across that whole spectrum, it's really important that everybody working paid or otherwise, is supported in the industry, because again, it all drives our industry, and it makes for more diverse content going out.
Completely. And when we talk about radio, community radio is where a lot of people started off their passions, being in their local areas and their regions. It's where they were able to be the engineer, the producer, and the presenter. I know when I was doing community radio, there wasn't such thing as when you come to the BBC and places where you have a presenter and you have these individual roles. You were like 3 things in one. You were the marketing, you were the social media, you were the PR. Like, if you didn't market that show, no one else was going to know.
Yeah.
And I think often those people at times get forgotten as well. Like, you can do a really great show, but if somebody isn't there pushing the marketing and the PR to get you out in the magazines or in places to be heard, then sometimes you do just drift away.
Definitely, sales marketing. The other one to mention that I'm really keen to engage more with the Radio Academy is on the commercial sales side, because frankly most of the stations that exist across the UK wouldn't exist without that commercial revenue coming in. And you could say, oh well, it's sales or it's advertising, isn't there somewhere else for that? And yeah, maybe there is, like there are for those niche areas. You've got organisations like the SRA for people working in student radio, where again, actually you're making shows and you're presenting them, but you also may be your station manager and looking after studio refurbs and managing sort of your turnover. It's incredible. So you've got those specific areas of support, the Community Media Association, Hospital Broadcasting Association. So yeah, you have, the advertising areas, but how does that bring in the revenue into audio, and how does it make sure that more and more audio outlets are available, and also bringing something else to listeners as well, kind of through the adverts, I suppose, and other kind of more innovative sales methods. I think we could probably all learn a bit from that.
Definitely, I know I could. So training and development is one thing that keeps popping up that you keep coming back to. And am I right in thinking that you feel very strongly about it?
Okay. Yeah, definitely.
But with Radio Academy, you've already helped implement something that goes along the streams of radio of training and development. RAMP, I believe you have found RAMP.
Yeah, well, so this was sort of my one of the things that I did when I was still a trustee at the Radio Academy in 2020. We were working very much on this idea of what is it that the Radio Academy is doing, how are we relating to people, are we supporting people, what is the support that they need, and where do they get that from, and where are the gaps. And I am really passionate about training and development, because I think it's lifelong. It's not just about, oh, let's bring in some new people, train them, and then off you go. What happens a couple of years after that? And what happens a couple of years after that? And what about the people, right at the top, heads of production companies? Does that mean that they know it all? Well, of course it doesn't, and so this lifelong learning and training. And as I said, the training and development that happens outside of the classroom is really, really important. I think, maybe even more so, because that's where you're developing as a person, you're developing confidence, you're building your network, and that network drives the industry.
So for anyone who doesn't know, what is RAMP about? What does RAMP do?
So RAMP is the Radio Academy mentoring programme. And I'm super proud that we're running this. We've run it for 2 years now. So as part of this kind of the strategy that the board sort of agreed to in 2020, it was looking at where are the gaps. So there is a bit of a glass ceiling around the mid-career level where it's really difficult to progress. And we've seen more recently as well, there's talk of skills gaps. It's difficult to find freelancers or staff people to do certain positions that aren't the entry level, but are, maybe producer level or above. And there was a frustration on one hand that, well, why aren't I getting those jobs? I've got all of these credits. I've been doing this job essentially. You know, I'm getting an assistant producer credit when I am producing, I'm researching, but I'm also running this podcast. So why aren't I getting those jobs? So RAMP looks at offering mentoring for people who are mid-career level. And it matches them with people who are quite senior in you know, some very, very senior in the industry, but more importantly than that have this immense experience and often diverse experience to say, well, it's not necessarily about I'm mid-career level in sales, so I need to talk to a sales exec to find out how to get to the next bit, because you kind of already do that.
So they're not necessarily paired up with someone who's in the same specific niche. It could be, let's say, a salesperson with a production manager.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's sort of saying, well, actually, then you need to have something. I need to understand a bit about your career path and where the potential routes are. But also, it's not my job as a mentor to give you your next job. It's to help you find your way and navigate through, help you to identify, well, where are the training opportunities? Where are the networks that I should be part of? What is it that I need to know? If I think that I'm ready for that job, but I'm not getting it, am I missing something? Or actually, it's just because I shouldn't really be working for them anyway. I'll go somewhere where I am respected. So it's kind of helping you navigate through whatever it is that is personal to you, and that's how a mentorship works. So RAMP takes place over 6 months, and please do come and talk to us about this afterwards. And actually, if you're in the room, I can see quite a few people who have been involved in RAMP and some mentors as well, which is great. So the idea is that you come out of it, not necessarily 6 months later you've suddenly got your dream job, but hopefully you feel more confident and more equipped to be able to take the steps you need to get to where you're going. And, you know, you might find that, well, I thought that this was the next job, but I just didn't realise how many different opportunities there are in audio, because, yeah, there's some traditional career paths, but, well, my career certainly hasn't been traditional. So there's many different ways to reach somewhere, and maybe you go off on a different path and you find, actually, that's what I wanted to do all along anyway.
So RAMP is it an annual scheme?
It is an annual scheme.
Okay.
So it will be opening this autumn for next year.
Okay. So what people can get out of it is, effectively, they have a mentor. They get out of it, they hopefully leave the scheme feeling more empowered and in the position to be able to advocate for themselves more. And that may be deciding that they want to take the next step in that particular career field, or actually they might want to sidestep and see what else is out there.
Yeah, exactly. Another really important part of RAMP is the network that you gain by being a participant. So each year we have 30 mentees, matched with 30 mentors. So those 30, they're having regular, I think, almost weekly catch-ups with each other. There's smaller action learning sets, which is where it's essentially peer support. So you come to that with something that's on your mind or bothering you. And it doesn't mean that somebody's going to tell you what to do in that group, but you've got a group of peers to be able to discuss it and look at different ideas. And also within the group of 30, I think it's each week or each month, somebody comes and delivers a 45-minute presentation on something that they know about, which is brilliant, because then as a group of 30, suddenly you've learned 29 huge things in audio that you didn't know. It's like some of them will be brand new to you, but also you go away thinking, oh God, it was really annoying having to prepare that 45-minute presentation, you know, in my spare time. But actually I've come out of it going, I really know my stuff. I do know what I'm talking about. I am not new entrant. I am, you know, at this level to take the next step. And then you've got a presentation that you can come and say, hi, are you doing another one of these events? Because I have this brilliant presentation that I could do for you. So there's a lot more benefits.
It's that, and it's a good remedy for imposter syndrome is what I'm hearing. Nice. Right. I'm going to be cheeky and ask this question because I have a feeling that there might be a couple of us in this room who are on this, and this is a safe space, right?
Well, now the cameras have got off.
Even better. Managing Director, MD. Sounds like a very big role. I think we all agree, right? What does it actually entail?
It's a very good question. So for me, what did I think it was, and
Let's start
why
with
did
that.
I take the job? To me, it comes down to, well, firstly, what is the Radio Academy? And the Radio Academy is a charity. It's there to support the people who work in radio and audio. So it's a charity that promotes and celebrates excellence in audio. It's the people who do that. So we are there to support the people, which is everything that I believe in, everything I was talking about, industry development. So to be able to come to an organisation like the Radio Academy with such aligned values, and then to lead the Radio Academy, because honestly, that's what I thought the job was. Like, I'm the boss. So to be able to lead the Radio Academy and to come and say, well, you know what, I don't think you are representing engineers enough. I don't feel represented. Well, I'm here now, so let's do something about that. Oh, well, somebody came to talk to me. Well, you know, you said you want to do something about sales, but you're not doing this, that, and the other. Oh, well, do you do that? Well, come and join us. Like, let's work on that together and see what we can do. Are you running a sales thing? Well, how can we support you? Can our members come to that? So it's a lot of that, a lot of building partnerships. So I spend, on a practical level, I spend a lot of my time talking to people, which is great because I love talking to people, and finding out what you do and seeing what we do. And, you know, maybe this isn't something that we're going to work on together right now, but isn't it better to find out and maybe work towards something in the future? We'll find out ways that we can mutually support each other, and also kind of on a practical level, we are a charity, so garnering support to from individuals and from organisations who support what we do and will give us donations, patronage, sponsorship to support the work, so that we can hold events like this that bring people together, and the RAMP programme, the 30 under 30, to celebrate younger talent. So that's a huge part of it.
So they want you to help bring the money in?
Essentially, yeah. It's also the operational day-to-day of running events like this. We've got the Radio Festival, the Radio Academy Festival, coming up on the 12th of September. Date for your diaries, get your ticket here. So I spend a lot of my time working on that, looking at the programme and the schedule, working with our executive producer and chair and coordinator on so what are the discussions that we should be having? What do we, the audience and the festival is all of us, it's all of us who work in audio. Who do we need to be hearing from? What do we need to know? What are the debates that we should be having? Kind of shaking things up a bit ourselves, getting outside of our normal day-to-day jobs. So that's a big part of it. And then if you really want to know, there's also the actual operational side, managing the finances. This weekend I went to our storage locker and picked up this lovely little box here. So, kind of very, very hands-on. I mean, again, we all work in audio. We all know what it means to be hands-on.
Very much so.
So we're kind of living the dream there as MD and carrying boxes around as well.
So what are your hopes? We know what the role entails, but what are your hopes for your role here as MD? What would you like to achieve?
I'd really like to leave this position whenever that time comes, feeling that I've made a difference in people's lives, of the people who work in the audio industry. And by that, I mean, I want people to be saying, oh yes, the Radio Academy represents me, it supports me, I feel supported, I feel that our industry is better for having the Radio Academy there because it stands up for my rights, what's important to me, it cares about my development. And I hope that, I think that it already does that. I wouldn't be here in this job if I didn't really believe in the Radio Academy, its values and what it does. And I want to broaden that. I want everybody in audio to be thinking that. And it doesn't mean that we're going to be perfect. And one of the things I'd really, really love starting from today is to be able to listen and to, you know, for everyone to come and tell me what they think. It's, you know, we're never going to please everyone at the same time. But what we should be doing is making sure that everyone feels supported, that everyone feels that they can come and say, well, this is what I need. And for us to at least be able to have a conversation about how that person can be supported, whether it's because of the direct impact of the Radio Academy or because it's saying, oh, you want to do this? Oh, well, actually, have you spoken to Camilla, who runs Podio? Have you spoken to Lisa at Multitrack? Because they might be able to help with those. But, oh, actually, you need this. But, oh, well, have you talked to Chloe at Audio UK? Let me introduce you. Or why don't you go and see Anne and drop by Radio TechCon? And, you know, it's so amazing that so many of those people that I'm massively name dropping are in the room, because that's all part of it. So I'd really love, that's what I hope for. So for kind of a very united industry that supports and represents everybody in the industry, and for us to all find where we slot together so that everybody goes away thinking, yeah, I feel good.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And if anybody wants to sort of give feedback, I'm under the impression that very much in your role you want to create a safe space and an open space where people can give feedback as we're all moving in a positive forward direction. How can people do so?
Well, for starters, thank you for coming tonight. Come and meet me. So I'm here. I'm a human. I'm a normal person. So please do come and talk to me. I think that sometimes organisations from the outside, you know, we're putting out a lot of messaging. It can feel a bit opaque. So just remember, we are people. Probably the easiest way is if you go to the Radio Academy website, there's a contact us button, and that it essentially sends us an email, and then I can respond to you via those. I do aim to try and get back to people if there's something specific that you need. I mean, in terms of resources, it's always worth looking on the website first just to see, actually, I just want to know a little bit more about different career progression routes. So that information is on the website. It's probably not that helpful to ask me for that. But if there's something, for example, that you'd like to see at an event tonight, then let us know, because we want to make sure that these are useful. Or if there's just general feedback about the Radio Academy, or some advice for me on, well, here's what you really need to be doing, and actually don't worry too much about those bits. You know, I'm still new to this job, so I'm very open to advice and thoughts and help.
You've mentioned it very briefly, but just so we make it sure. What is coming up with the Radio Academy that people should be putting in their diaries?
Well, the big one is the Radio Academy Festival. That's 12th of September, and I am really excited about that. All I'm going to say is that I've been having a lot of conversations about ice cream. If you were there last year, you'll know that there's pizza. But also, the thing that's exciting me about the Radio Academy Festival is being able to go and actually hear from some of the people that you don't normally hear from, and those different perspectives. Something that excites me is actually, you know, we talk about, well, this is a method that's best for radio, this is best for in podcasting, this is better on an internet streaming platform. How do all of those things work together? You know, what's best for this particular content or this particular person? So that's kind of a bit of a theme of drawing the connections between all of the different bits and pieces of audio that actually make up the industry and actually make pieces of audio. So that's all I'm going to say on it at the moment. But, you know, drawing those connections and teasing out, you know, the voices that we don't necessarily hear as much from. Also, at the moment, something you can do tonight is the 30 under 30 is currently open for entries. So maybe you're best to talk about this, like one of our shining stars. It's the ones to watch. So it's celebrating and championing people who are under the age of 30 as of 31st of August this year. And you can nominate yourself, and you should if you're under 30 and you feel you want to. Really importantly, nominate others. Be someone's champion and recognise something that someone is doing that they're really shining, and you want that to be celebrated. Because not only should we be looking at the 30 under 30 saying, wow, you're amazing, but also hopefully that will then be a support to lift you on to the next thing, and again build a network. So that's currently open until 31st of August, so have a look at that, all the details on the website, and please do have a think about who you'd like to nominate. It doesn't matter whether you nominate yourself or you're nominated by someone, it's all exactly the same. There's no preferences either way.
Please do nominate yourself. I think a lot of the time people think I need someone to nominate me. I need someone to shine the light on me. Please, I'm such a big believer in advocating for yourself. If you're like, actually, I've done some really, really great stuff, I contribute to this industry, I think I'm bomb, please nominate yourself. Please. Like, I would love us to do that more. As much as we champion other people, champion yourself as well. It's really important. Does anyone have any questions or anything that we should be discussing? Because now is the time. Don't be shy.
I have a controversial one.
Go for it. I think your voice is cut.
Yeah, I'll just shout. You've mentioned podcast a fair bit, and I know the industry is shrinking in some ways, but moving onto other platforms in other ways. So I wonder if perhaps it should be called the Audio Academy now.
Maybe so. For me at the moment, the Radio Academy is there to support. It's our charitable mission. We have to do it, but it's also what I want to do. Is there to support the whole of the audio and radio industry. I think I feel that historically, there's probably reasons why they've been looked at separately, just because of the business models around them. But in my opinion, and what I would like to achieve more of in the Radio Academy as well, because it aligns with our mission, is that it's all about audio, it's storytelling through the power of audio and voice and that connection. So yeah, maybe all ideas gratefully received. Importantly, I think, if people who don't work in radio are feeling disconnected, then this is me reaching out and saying, like, what's in a name? We are here to support the audio industry, radio, podcasting, streaming, music. It's all about connection through, voice and audio. So.
Any more questions?
Or comments or suggestions?
What's the saying? Speak now. Oh,
That's a good question. What are you listening to at the moment that you love?
Oh, yes. Good question. Well, so we have a bit of a routine in our household. So I'm not getting out as much by myself as I'd like, because I'm so busy talking to people. So that's where normally I'll have my walks where I pop a podcast on. And actually it's a bit old school, but one of the things that I really love listening to on my walks is Desert Island Discs, just because it's got that lovely little, mix of learning about someone's life. And normally I like to go for the ones that you've never heard of, like the epidemiologist or someone like that, where you just learn something new and you get to listen to some music. But the routine, I tend to have Six Music on most of the time. I especially love Cerys Matthews on a Sunday morning, and the reason I love that, and the reason why I'll actually listen to that again, even if I don't listen to it on a Sunday, is because of the mix. It somehow manages to speak to all parts of me, in terms of I will be listening to some, current music, but then suddenly there'll be this old Indian song from the 1960s that my dad would sing around the house, and it's just so evocative, and I'm hearing it on a mainstream channel on the radio just out of the blue, and then there's some poetry, and then it's just, I think I just love it. I think it's just really beautiful. I'm really into sort of really short audio snippets at the moment. So in our household, my husband will always have the 5-minute BBC News, sort of daily update, and we don't really listen to news other than that unless it's on the radio. And then there's a podcast called Dithering that he likes, which is really interesting because it's not one that I would have come to. He works in technology, so it's about technology, but he actually pays for that directly to the people who make it, because he trusts their opinions on talking about technology news in the world. So that somehow has become one of my daily listening habits. And being, we're just coming out of South Asian Heritage Month, so I've got to give a shout out to the Masala podcast, which is really fun. And that's is by Soul Sutras, Sangeeta Pillai. And it's a really fun podcast because she is from Mumbai and felt that she wasn't hearing that kind of Indian woman's voice on podcasts and or anywhere in the media really. And you'd think, oh, okay, well, that's niche, isn't it? To have a person from Mumbai. But well, why is it? Because it's just interesting hearing about the world and having interviews with people and hearing different perspectives. That where the difference comes in is it's from a different perspective and a different sounding voice, for example. But it's actually just really entertaining. And it's really exciting to me at the moment because there are so few South Asian women presenters, in speech and podcasting. And so that's exciting. But then really exciting recently is that podcast and her face has been up on billboards in New York and in London and, everywhere. Like, how cool is that?
All online. I have. It is. It's nice to see something that may have been like a small DIY project that actually has an amazing reach. That is the one thing, even though we've been saying the Radio Academy, it's the one thing that I do love about podcasting. It's you can come with your own perspective and what makes you unique and actually speak to an audience, and you don't have to be seen as a niche. Like your niche is just you being you, and then it's relatable to so many people.
Yeah. And isn't that just what radio is? You talk about, well, that's good at podcasts, but actually that's what radio is. It's somebody talking to a whole audience. They don't know everybody's experience, but that skill is, as a broadcaster, is being able to use your own lived experience and your voice, and you still connect with people because people hear their voice in that. And that's what, podcasts are sort of democratizing a lot of that. Anyone can set one up. The next step is marketing and actually getting people to know about it.
I set up a audio post-production company the first wave of COVID 3 years ago. And we're trying to support a growing pool of freelance engineers to help them and to help us and to get all the good stuff done. I had 2 individuals come to me within the last 3 days. I'm interested in your views with the production and engineering mindset and operational mindset as well on this, saying we haven't necessarily got the money to employ one of your freelancers, but can you suggest any AI tools that we can bring in to get the sound of a certain podcast who we're wanting to aspire to be? I'm really interested to hear about where your thoughts are in that world. On the one hand, making efficiencies and workflows and processes smoother, faster, better, versus not wanting to erode the talents of the people who spent careers developing those, and where your kind of strategy is, mindset is in relation to that.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I've really got a strategy for it yet, but leave it with me. But I do have views on it, because I think that it's really interesting, this discussion around, on one side, this sort of super excitement around, wow, AI, this is a new thing. And the fact that anyone gets to use it, it's not like, when the first new shiny Apple phone came out and 3 people could afford it. You know, this has been rolled out really widely, so that's really exciting. And then in the same breath, you hear the fear: is this going to take my job? Is it going to make me redundant? Well, it can't do what I do. My personal view is, you know, I guess coming as someone who loves technology, it's all innovation, like technology innovation. Nobody would tell you now, no, you shouldn't be using Google. You should definitely walk to the library and find the book yourself. So there's a level of, well, actually, it's all new tools to be able to help you do your job better. I think there's also something about democratization as well. So once your iPhone became affordable and we could all have one, you can now record a podcast using your phone. You don't have to buy an expensive microphone and editing software, etc. You can start learning. And I don't know. I think, you know, like there's the assistive versus the generative AI, which is, so assistive is looking at those things that help you do your job rather than replacing your job. Generative is things like this AI tool can write a script now, so therefore we don't need you. My view on it is that we're still in very, very early days of understanding how to best use these tools and to see where they go. That doesn't make me scared of them. That makes me want to partake of them and to be part of that conversation that develops them and makes them important, makes them useful. The bit that I do think is far behind, and the scary bit, is how there's this complete lack of understanding and lack of regulation, and even a lack of legal stance on a lot of content made with AI, but just the use of AI tools generally. That I find scary, is how far behind that is compared to how quickly the technology is evolving. So I think that's where the focus should be.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because on the one hand, you've very eloquently, very well looked at the implications of using AI. But one thing we haven't really touched on too much is the flow of money as the result of using the AI, and whether people are going to, I mean, one of the clients that came to me has got a decent budget, and what they're saying to us is, can you as a production company advise us on a way where we don't have to use you anymore? Basically that's what they're saying. Can we put something in a template? And then the flow of money then means that we then say, well, no, we can't, because we're protecting our jobs on the one hand. On the other hand, yeah, we can do that because you're a client and we want to help you maximise your workflows. But then we can't then employ the freelancers, so then they can't do that work that they've been trained to do. Also, the understanding at the same time, this is the future, this is coming, this is what the industry needs to embrace, because in the same way, this is exactly the same argument as quarter inch versus VCS. You know, there has to be progression. So it's the finances around it which are the end result of using the tech, and I think that's the interesting discussion there. Because we're going to be embracing the tech, it's the money, how that flows. That's the thing I'm interested in.
Yeah, so what did you do? Did you help them?
TBC.
You mentioned desert island discs. I hope you get on there one day. I think you qualify.
That'll be. I've started making my list. You know,
Good.
That's my aspiration.
Well, you're only allowed 8 discs, actually. But assuming we can jump from desert island discs and you stranded on the moon, where you are only allowed 1 disc to play in the program, and before I come to rescue you as a rocket man, what is the one piece of music that you would play back from the moon before we bring you back down to Earth?
Oh my gosh, that's really hard. I could help you. I know, I don't know why I'm looking at. I mean, I was struggling to get down to 8, and I've got to get down to 1 suddenly. I've just got to pick something. I'm going to go with Titanium, David Guetta, Sia, because, you know, it's the first one that came into my head as something that I love and will always get me up dancing. So I think I'd probably need a bit of energy and get me up dancing on the moon.
Well, my choice would be, nostalgically, to bring my copy of Sheila Chandra singing Ever So Lonely Without You when we were up on the moon before we returned to Earth.
Wow.
I signed her for Decca Records some time back, but I'm quite proud of that as well.
Oh, yeah.
But welcome to
you.
the Radio Academy in your present position. You certainly are a very talented and person that can do all sorts of jobs.
Oh, thank you very much. I
And
appreciate
before
that.
the Radio Academy have their special meeting on the 12th, there might be something in my mind that I would like to discuss with you privately that might be something that the Radio Academy could be doing that nobody's ever thought of.
Ooh. I'm definitely intrigued. Come and find me later.
Next
The one at the back.
Either shout or come here. Yeah, cool.
So imagine you're 12 months in. What would you like to see more of in the radio and audio community, and what would you like to see less of in the audio community?
I suppose, you know, it's a bit of a cop-out to say I'd like to see more of this, but I would, you know, I think that this connection and community is really, really important. And I'd like to find, don't ask me how I'm going to do this yet, but I am really passionate about sort of the audio community across the whole of the UK. You know, as I said, I'm from Manchester, and I moved to London for the job, and then I've stayed here ever since. It's very much my home. But I want more of that everywhere, which is happening. You know, we've got our competing Birmingham event tonight, and we were in Leeds last week. I suppose, yeah, more connection, you know, all of this sort of everything that I'm talking about, the training and the development, the celebration, the lifting each other up, the equity. I really think a lot of that comes from community, and I want to see in that community, whatever that looks like, however it's done then, I want there to be people from every single different organisation at all the different levels. I want all of like the bosses from the biggest audio brands that you can think of to be in that room with, you know, all of us, with the people just coming into the industry, the ones running, you know, the student radio stations as well, because if they're not seeing each other and talking to each other, I don't really think anything will change. I definitely want to see more of that in 12 months. Let's see at the Radio Academy Festival 2024. Let's see how it differs, and then you can assess whether I've achieved that or not. What I'd like to see a bit less of is, and again, speaking very candidly in our safe space, I think a bit less of the kind of infighting, I'm going to call it, for want of a better word. And I don't mean competition or those commercial, you know, competitive differences. I think that's exciting. It's what drives us. Competition is really important. But when it comes to supporting our people, we should all be aligned on that. We should all be doing it together. And that doesn't mean that, oh, well, everyone else stop and everyone just do the Radio Academy. I'm all for having lots of different people all working towards boosting the industry. And I would like us to work together more and less of this. Oh, well, I don't think you do that. Oh, you're not good at that. Or it's, you know, it's sort of a bit less. What is it they say? A bit less fighting over the pie and more fighting towards just a bigger pie to begin with.
All right, thank you.
Are you happy to shout?
I think I can manage that. Yes, witness the front here. Dom Chambers, person with many hats, but I think on this occasion I'm going to doff my local Radio Day hat. As you know, you and I have had many conversations, and I think as I go around the country visiting local radio, mainly the community sector, but other, you know, the re-emergence of small-scale commercial through the DAB offer, and there's some really exciting things happening in the local audio and radio landscape at the moment. There's always going to be a central challenge, I think, for a national charity to sort of really reflect how it can sort of represent local. But in terms of what's succeeding, and this predates you, but I know you're personally keen on it, because you've just touched on it, is the socials and the networking that has really come back. And obviously COVID, everything sort of packed up a little bit, but actually that side was weakening anyway, and that's really bounced back. And socials tonight, some of the socials, and there'll be more coming up for Christmas. So that's really to be encouraged. When I talk about this, we shared, we were both trustees at the same time. When I was talking about the academy to various local radio stations, the one thing that people really missed from local radio stations that the academy was doing was the Nations and Regions Awards, and I think there was a really good opportunity. I'm aware that the ARIAs have put in the new community category, and that's a very welcome development. But it would be an interesting discussion to have, because I think in some ways the landscape has moved on a little bit from when those awards were around. But I think there's something there, a discussion to be had, because I think it's an automatic way of very local audio and radio organisations feeling included and part of the Radio Academy family. And as somebody, and I will shut up then, but as somebody who drove a classroom project to winning Radio Academy Southwest Station of the Year within 5 years, I can tell you what a boost that was to our volunteers at Summer Valley FM, and actually what funding opportunities arose from that accolade and that honour. So no need for answers on this now, but perhaps there's a discussion to be had there.
Yeah, thank you.
Long question, short answer.
Yeah, yes, I'd like to talk more as
Just a reflection, not a question, and I'm sure people wanting to chat and mingle. And one of the things I wanted to say is I came from a TV background and moved into radio and audio about 10 years ago, and there was never anything like this in TV that I was able to access. And I just think it's a very positive industry. I think the Radio Academy has got a lot to do with that, and I think it's brilliant that so many people are here tonight. I'm looking forward to meeting lots of people, seeing faces that I recognise. But I've certainly been really impressed with the events, and I brought one of my work experience students to the last summer social, and he was 16, and he got to the event in the garden. Some of you might have been there about 10 minutes before me, and he said, "Is it okay if I just go in, or shall I wait for you?" And I said, "Well, it's up to you," thinking that's quite difficult to go into an event where you don't know anybody and you're 16. Anyway, I got there and he was mingling and chatting and everyone was welcoming to him, and I was just so proud of the industry, and I thought, what a great place for young people to be a part of. And so I just want to encourage you that I know you're going to make it better and better, but I think there's a lot of wonderful stuff to build on. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for bringing young people along to the events. It's something that I just ask everyone in this room to do. Please go and talk to one other person, at least, maybe someone unexpected, about this event tonight, about the Radio Academy, and about what we aim to do, and invite them along next time.
Yeah, I've got one question.
There's one more. Yeah.
That's all right. It kind of leads on well from what you've just said, but I wondered if you've got any advice for young people trying to start out in their career in the audio industry, and being a woman of colour yourself, it's nice to see that you're representative to me, and I know trying to be in the audio industry that I often get put into certain boxes, like you can present the Asian show, or you can present this show, but there's never anything else that feels able to do, or if I want to try and do any other production roles and learn different areas, it's sort of like, no, you need to stick to a particular course or whatever. And sometimes I find it then difficult to know how to actually progress in the industry when there's a lot of people telling you there's a set way you need to do things, or I know you've got mentoring and things like that, but practical ways that you can actually progress in the industry, what would you suggest?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think it's a really good point, and I'll be completely honest, I think that it is still an issue as well. Like, there are a lot of problems that I would like to urge the industry. I can't fix them by myself. I'm doing what I can. The Radio Academy can't fix them. The organisations and the people in them need to fix them. And one of the issues is that kind of putting people in a box. And I've had that myself as well. So yeah, I hear you, and I think that is a thing that it shouldn't be us, the ones in the boxes changing that necessarily. It should be others. I think from our perspective, from someone in that position, one of the things, if you want to work in production, some advice that I got, which was really helpful, because I too was duly marched off to the Asian programs. I think in some ways actually I kind of thought, well, rather than fighting it, I lent into it a little bit, not in that I then went to go and work for one, because I didn't have that interest in the content that they were making, and so it would be wrong of me to try and force myself into that, and I wouldn't be doing them a service. But I did learn from the people there who were the ones who were willing to have a chat and say, oh, well, you're brilliant, but yeah, I get that this isn't really right for you. Why don't you go and do that and the other? So I would say, go and talk to people. Most people, and they don't have to just look like you. In my experience, I think most people are up for a chat. I know the problem is they're not necessarily then up for giving you a job, probably because they don't have one. But I think that, in broadening your network in those ways, that's one really important way to do it. Something else that I did in terms of progressing your career, I mean, I didn't set out when I joined the industry to have sort of the random kind of career path that I have. I thought that, well, I'd go and I'd be an engineer at the BBC, and that's probably a set path. And then I don't know, be a senior engineer. I don't know what's after that. But I thought there would be a sort of a set path. It doesn't work like that. And actually, I'm really glad that it doesn't. When I was in a situation where I felt like I was being pushed in a way that didn't work for me, it was really hard and sometimes took me years. But I left and I went and found something that I was passionate about, and kind of found my own way. And I suppose that's my version of having not been put in a box, is to go off and do something different and say, well, I'd rather do something completely different than sit in your box. So that's why I have worked across film and TV and theatre and dance as well as audio, because my passion was I want to go and develop the industry and work with people who have the same values as me and will listen when I say, well, actually this is a strategy to work towards this. So if that means leaving this part of the industry for a bit, and I really hope that you don't, but that's what I had to do, and I'm richer for it, because now I'm back and I've come with all of this like wealth of knowledge and connections and experience in completely different areas, all within media and entertainment. So yeah, you sort of hopefully trying to be a bit brave and find your path, but then also not going too far because oh well, that's where the money is, so I'll just go and do that. It's a bit of a difficult line, but that's where your network will come in and sort of hopefully help to steer those decisions.
Can I also recommend something? If there are like certain job roles, or let's say the next setup that you're looking at, let's say you're a broadcast journalist now, you want to be a senior broadcast journalist, LinkedIn is like free stalking. I'm like, genuinely, it's legal, it's free. Like, you literally type in stuff and reach out to those people. Yeah, you might not be getting a job, but you're speaking to them, finding out the skills, what's happening in terms of like what goes on, because that's another thing. Sometimes you want a job when you speak to someone, you're like, you get the tea, you're like, oh, I don't even want that job. So speak to different people and find out exactly what may work and may not. But like, even jobs that I apply for these days, even like when there's hiring managers, I'm telling you now, even if you're not specifically qualified for the job that you want, reach out to the hiring manager. The people, they always, nowadays they say they've got a space for like an informal discussion. Reach out. That little 10-minute Zoom or that 10-minute discussion is also, even if you don't get the job, it's a way for people to know who you are and to be in those spaces. Just keep shooting your shot.
As a final couple of minutes, does anyone else have any little tips or advice or things that you've picked up along the way? Yeah.
Just on that point, as daft as this may sound, in that scenario, I always think of George Michael and Madonna and Kylie work with me, because over their careers, they have had to address the exact same thing. This kind of whole idea of reinvention and how do you go from what you have now to what the future's going to be. And at my point in my career, I've been in the audio industry for about 20 odd years, I still think about that. So it doesn't stop. What you're doing now is putting a plan in place for the rest of your career, not just for the next step. So it's how you can then go about evolving and how you, the processes you put in place to do that. So for me, it's George Michael, even though I'm not asked if I lose music.
I think on that note.
On that note, are we heading back upstairs for some? I hate the word networking. It sounds very like to chillax, chillax and chit chat with people, have a drink, a little nibble. On that note, we all know who Aradhna is now, so keep in touch and everyone stay connected.
Thank you, and thanks so much, Sylvie, for sitting with me today.